my gosh, I feel like my heart is racing. I've been like hella nervous to film this because I know that the topics I'm going to be discussing are, uncomfortable. And I know that I'm going to be discussing some like potentially controversial topics. I'm definitely going to be sharing some of my hot takes. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Catherine, and today we're going to be having some real talk, a real heart-to-heart, a come-to-Jesus moment, if you will, or just really me sharing with you guys some realizations that I've had as I've been digging more and more into my identity as a Chinese American adoptee. This is gonna be a longer video. So buckle in, kids. I've actually almost scrapped the entire idea of filming and posting this. Like, if you know me, you know I'm a pretty open book. Except for my family and like talking about my childhood. Like, that area is just kind of an area I try to avoid in conversation. So talking about this, posting this on the internet is definitely new territory for me, but I think like my intentions for making this video kind of overshadowed all of my hesitations. Like, I'm not trying to make this video to put anyone on blast. Definitely I'm not trying to generalize my experience to other adoptees or other people who have experiences with adoption, because I know that there's just so many different unique perspectives and circumstances, and I know like my story does not speak for all stories out there. I will say though that the purpose of this video, in my mind, is just like to contribute to a diverse conversation around adoption from an adoptee's perspective, because like representation really matters. Like, honestly, like that shit has saved my life, and if I can share something that even one other person relates to or can feel not so alone in the world in, then I feel like I've done my job here. So with that long ass intro, let's get into these realizations I've had. I guess I should explain that my family has always been really open with me about the fact that I was adopted. I think it would have been pretty hard to hide because I'm Asian and they are white. And so I've never really struggled with viewing my family as my family. Like, I've always considered the people who adopted me as my parents. Like, I've called them mom and dad my whole life. I call them that to this day. And so the not so close relationship that I'm about to allude to isn't a product of me struggling to reconcile like my adoptive family versus my real family. Like, the family that adopted me is the only family I've ever known. So I was really fortunate in being able to learn that concept that the term family doesn't always need to track so perfectly to people you share blood with. It can be people that you share really strong experiences and bonds with outside of blood. Ironically, I think that this understanding is actually what gave me the strength to be able to set boundaries between me and people who I considered family at one point, when I realized that they weren't providing the love and support that needed to be there. I witnessed a number of really traumatic things that made growing up in my household really difficult. Things like parental alienation syndrome, psychological abuse, emotional manipulation, sexual assault, threats of suicide. Just like some really ugly stuff. And it got to a point where I started to realize that the bond that I shared with my family wasn't a loving and warm and supportive bond. It was turning more into a very painful and abusive bond that was forged by many, many years of experience, and I think honestly prolonged by this assumption that family is forever and family can always be forgiven. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is this concept that lays out the needs that a human being needs to have met in order to reach self-actualization and kind of reach their fullest potential. When I was growing up, I kind of always hovered between the bottom two layers of having my physiological needs met and then having my safety needs met. There were some days that I felt secure and safe in my home, and there were lots of other days that I didn't. It really wasn't until college that I was able to experience the next 2 layers of Maslow's hierarchy, which involve love and belongingness and, meeting my esteem needs. And I think this was largely because I was able to move away from home onto campus, and I was able to meet people who could really help me. This is when I really realized that things at home were not normal. Like, wait, everyone else doesn't have to lock their door at night and barricade it. No one else was told that they would be disowned if they were lesbian. And actually, I recognize that there are probably many other people who have had this happen to them or are currently being told things like this, and that just breaks my heart because I know it's not right. These are not acts of love, and they're not things that should be excused. And if this is happening to you, you deserve better. I deserved better. I held so much guilt for feeling like these things were not right, that these things shouldn't have happened to me, that these things shouldn't be excused, because when I would share with people in my past what was happening at home, I would frequently get a response to the tune of, well, they're your family, that sucks, but you gotta figure it out, you gotta forgive them, you gotta just get over it and get along with them because family's forever. They're all you have. And I believed that for a long time, and I wholeheartedly tried. I really tried to mend some relationships in my family. But at the same time, I would never tell a victim of abuse that they need to go make amends with their abuser. I will agree that it is really important to process trauma and to forgive for you, meaning learning coping mechanisms that will help you get to a place where you're no longer harboring, ill intentions or resentment. But I don't think forgiving someone and learning how to process through that trauma means that you are obligated to share space or be in the same room with that person as if nothing happened. I think for me, I've gotten to a point in my life and in my processing where I don't hold any ill will, or I really try not to hold any resentment toward anyone in my family. I don't view the people in my family as evil or awful individuals. I more try to view them with an understanding perspective of they're just people who maybe made bad choices or made mistakes that ultimately didn't help us build a strong and loving relationship. And I mean, it is what it is, and it's okay. Not every single person who comes into your life is meant to be there forever. So as I've been getting more involved in the adoptee community, I've been seeing this narrative around how all adoptees should be really grateful for their adoption and feel so lucky that they were saved from the situation they were born into. And I usually see this in the face of an adoptee who is speaking negatively about an aspect of their adoption, or who's actively supporting some kind of reform around adoption processes that are used today. I remember growing up, this concept of my family saving me was brought up a lot. Comments like, if it wasn't for us, you would be in China working in a rice field, or even worse, you'd be dead. There's no happy life for women in China. You would be nothing if we didn't bring you to the US and give you the life that you have now. And maybe they were right, but also at the same time, maybe they were wrong. I think the fact is that no one really knows what could have happened if my family didn't adopt me. Alternatively, another family adopted me, or my bio family was given the resources to be able to keep their family together. It's just so hard to really say what could have happened. I think that there is some pride that adoptive parents should be able to have, being able to share their love and their support and their resources to a child who really needs it. It's really beautiful and it's really special. I think though that there can sometimes be this line that's crossed, and it's one that stems from a savior complex that really articulates to a child that everything that they love about their life and who they are has nothing to do with anything that they could have contributed or any of the hard work that they put into getting themselves to where they are. And that can just be really damaging, I think, just like for anyone's identity and individuality. I think for me, it was really important for me to recognize that I can be so grateful for all of the super positive aspects of my adoption, like having the opportunity to live in the United States, being able to enjoy the foods that I love here, being encouraged to strive and be my best, and having the support of my family through many of my endeavors. But I think at the same time, it's also okay for me to not be so grateful for the things that were really negative about my adoption, like my sexual assault being justified because we didn't share blood, or the identity crisis that I'm still kind of working through today because the conversation about life before I was adopted was so off limits. Like I kind of think like they don't need to be mutually exclusive. Like with any situation, there's the good and the bad, and like you need the bad sometimes to be able to recognize the good, and sometimes you need the bad to be able to recognize that you got to go out and make your own good. Being a transracial adoptee, I think that there's like this extra layer of complexity that was added to my adoption because words like ethnicity and heritage and culture came into question a lot. With my family being white, I was raised with very US-based traditions and culture and language, and understandably so, because those are things that my parents grew to know and to love. And so it makes sense that that's what they passed down to me. In my earliest years, I didn't know anything different than how to live like a white person in America. The problem was, I am not a white person in America. And as soon as I left, the comforts of my home, that became super clear. One of my earliest memories of when I became very aware of my ethnicity was in elementary school, when there was this group of older kids who, pulled the corners of their eyes back, looked at me and started taunting me, saying that I looked like a bag of rice. And then when they found out that I was adopted, they further bullied me and said that I was actually worth less than a bag of rice, and that's why my birth family gave me up. And I mean, I think the thing is that my family is not to blame for all the racism that exists in the world, but they did have a role to play in how I came to understand my ethnicity and ultimately came to be really ashamed of it. By doing things, potentially subconsciously or not, like telling me in various forms that I needed to be saved from China, or really closing off conversations about my ethnicity or about traditions and beliefs and values that Chinese people have, or by actively commenting and praising physical attributes of mine that looked more European than Asian, I became really ashamed of my skin, like to the point where I wanted nothing more in life than to just be white. Like it was getting really unhealthy. Like I remember in my teenage years, I was looking into skin bleaching soap and eye surgery and cheek reconstruction. And I think even further than that, like I hate saying this, but like I feel like I was racist toward people who looked like me. I would say things like I would never date an Asian guy, or I would persuade people that I was a banana, yellow on the outside, white on the inside, to make them feel more at ease than if I was Asian through and through. I mean, all of these things really like add to this conversation around not being proud to be Asian and not seeing the beauty in my ethnicity. It's just like this disconnect between the culture I was raised in and this very different culture that has so many close ties to my ethnicity was just so hard to reconcile. I used to feel just like so much guilt and shame when I found myself in situations that really highlighted that I didn't know how to be Asian. Like when strangers would come up to me and try to speak Mandarin to me and I couldn't understand them, or when I would accidentally walk into a Chinese home with my shoes on. There was so much just like, why is it so hard to just be what you were born? But over time, I came to realize that I can't carry that burden of that erasure of a culture that I only knew for 11 months. when I was in China. I can't blame myself for finding it really difficult to grow into a culture that many assumed I should have known when I was being assimilated into a culture that some assumed that I wanted. I think, today I have a very strong interest to become closer to my Chinese ethnicity. I mean, I'm saying like more than ever before. Like, I think it's because of the increased representation in media. Again, representation matters, people. I think also just like being around more diverse spaces since moving to the Bay Area. Like, I don't know. I feel proud as hell to be Chinese American, but I know that I have my work cut out for me. I know there's a lot of work to be done to help rectify the distance that I've felt from the Asian American community, but I'm committed to doing that work. And I'm really excited to be going down this, self-exploration journey. And I think it's because I'm not doing it out of shame. I'm doing it out of love, like love for myself and love for people who look like me and maybe potentially have shared some of the lived experiences that I have. So that's the tea. Those are my hot takes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.